So you can download this deck on the Speed Duel catalog, but I wanted to go ahead and go over the deck build and kind of the motivation for it. So this skill right here, Beware the Brothers Paradox. If you have no cards in your extra deck, which means we can't play Waking the Dragon, um, we can reveal one of the pieces of Gate Guardian or Gate Guardian itself. We can normal summon level 7 for one less tribute. We can tribute a level 7 in addition to our normal summoner set. Um, and then, so it basically helps us do like Duelist Kingdom style, where we can summon a Gate Guardian piece on the first turn, which we have Sangha of the Thunder and Suijin. And then we also have a couple other things once we flip this card over. So you can't do any of these until you show your opponent you have a Gate Guardian piece. But once you do, your opponent no longer takes effect damage, which is why in the replay you'll see that when they use Dice Foon and they roll a 1 and a 6, they don't take any effect damage. Our skill actually protected them from that. And we can only attack with one monster each, but that monster can attack 2 monsters each battle phase, which is going to combine with final attack orders, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. So the fact that we can only attack with one monster means it ends up being really difficult to do direct battle damage. So I'm going to show you the workaround we have for that in this deck. But this deck, I think, it was able to get out of the casual and into the semi-competitive by playing as many level 4 lowers that get benefits either on the field or when they go to the graveyard. And I also kind of wanted to try and find, this was kind of a little fun project of mine because Vortex Trooper had moved on the list. And I kind of wanted to find a deck that might show a little bit where he shines. So one of the things that this deck sometimes struggles with is if you don't get a Gate Guardian piece, then you can't start using your skill. And what Vortex Trooper allows us to do is when you normal summon him, you can put 2 cards from your hand back into the deck and draw 2 cards. And if he's destroyed, you get to draw an extra card. So our main goal here is we can search him off of Witch of the Black Forest if we open with Witch of the Black Forest. And then on the next turn, we can normal summon Vortex Trooper. And then hope to draw into a Gate Guardian piece. And then if we do, we can actually just normal summon over the Vortex Trooper, because his downside is that he has 0 attack. So when you normal summon him, it's kind of sitting duck. But in this deck, you can actually just normal summon right over him into a Gate Guardian piece if you draw one. It's still a little risky. And I will say that this Vortex Trooper in this deck used to be a Snipe Hunter. And if I wanted to make it a little more competitive, I would probably go back to having it be a Snipe Hunter. But it's still, it can get you a Gate Guardian piece when you don't have one before. So, a couple of things. So our Gate Guardian pieces, their effects are when they get attacked once while they're on the field, you can make your opponent's attack become 0. So they're kind of like a big defensive wall, because even if your opponent gets one stronger monster, it's not going to be able to get over it. So they need 2 monsters stronger than these. And then we use up some pretty powerful level 4s. So when Witch of the Black Forest, when you normal summon over her and she goes to the graveyard, you can search for almost any level 4 lower monster in our deck. So you can search for Breaker because he only has 1,000 defense. You can search for Tribe Infecting Virus. You can search for Vortex Trooper. Mudora you cannot search for because he has 1,800 defense, but you can also search for a Sphere Kribo. So she gets benefit when you tribute summon over her. What Breaker can do is when he's normal summoned, he gets a spell counter, and you can use that spell counter to destroy a spell or trap. So you can destroy a spell or trap before you normal summon your Gate Guardian piece. Maybe get rid of a Floodgate or a Book of Moon. Or if they use that Floodgate or Book of Moon on the Breaker, you can still then just tribute summon over it, kind of clearing the way for your Gate Guardian piece. Tribe Infecting Virus and when I used to have a Snipe Hunter here both did the same purpose, where they could clear out a monster before you, or an entire field if you're playing Gate Guardian pieces. The reason I liked having one tribe and one snipe was tribe was really good against Amazonas, and then snipe was really good against decks that played a lot of face down monsters because you can't kill those with tribe. So it was nice to have one of each. It's still fun experimenting with Vortex Trooper, but I probably would go back to a snipe hunter after some experimentation. And then what Mudora does is he's not going to do anything for us on the field, but when we tribute over him into the graveyard, we can banish him as a quick effect to shuffle cards from our graveyard back into our deck. So either cards that we want back in our deck, or if your opponent plays something like Monster Reborn, you can actually use Mudora to put it back in their deck before it gets Monster Reborn, which can be pretty powerful. And there's also lots of decks that Mudora is good against. We only main deck one Sphere Kribo, which feels a little weird, but one thing you got to keep in mind is when we normal summon Overwitch of the Black Forest, we can actually search into that Sphere Kribo if it's still in our deck, which I think happened in one of my games. So we don't need to run more than one, but my side deck did change a little bit, and I did go ahead and put 2 extra in the side deck, which we'll talk about in a minute. We have Monster Born to get our Gate Guardian pieces back. You saw a lot of Mirage of Nightmare in that deck, where during your opponent's turn you draw until you have 4, and then on your turn you discard back to the same number you had before you activated it. But if you activate something like Twister or Double Cyclone to destroy it before it resolves on your turn, you actually get to keep all 4 of the cards. And then the main combo of the deck here is going to be this final attack orders. So if you pretend that your opponent has 2 face down defense position monsters, and we remember that our skill says only 1 monster can attack each turn, if our Gate Guardian piece attacked both of those monsters, we wouldn't deal any damage. And a lot of people go the piercing route, but what final attack orders will do is it'll force the monster into attack position, which means that both the monsters that I'm attacking are put into attack mode before they end up battling, which means you end up doing some pretty massive damage. As well as if your monster gets Sphere Kribo'd while you're attacking your opponent and they try and attack you back, you can flip over final attack orders to switch your guy back into attack mode, use the effect to make your opponent's monster 0, and then your opponent's monster will be destroyed by the battle because they attacked into an attack position monster instead of a defense position monster. And then we just have some generic cards in the side deck to help us out. I will say that these 2 Sphere Kribos used to be Jinzo, and before that they used to be Mobius the Frost Monarchs, because both of those were searchable by Witch of the Black Forest. I don't think Jinzo and Mobius are as good as they were last format, so I did go ahead and change them out to Sphere Kribo, because this format feels very much like an OTK format. And also, I do already have 3 breakers and 3 spell trap destructions, so Jinzo and Mobius are a little bit overkill. Whereas in the last format of very heavy traps, I think that they were very much worth it. Don't forget to check out the links in the description below where you can download these decks and play them yourselves online. This has been your Speedo Professor. That's game.